When someone, even on television news, decides to tell you who they are, I think it's a really, really good idea to listen to them because it's for our own benefit and it's for our own survival because now they're talking about death.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right. I would say this. We're not voting for the right people. In North Carolina, wake up.
Fox News. Brian Kilmeade, big-headed Brian Kilmeade, sits on the end of that couch after piggybacking off Lawrence Jones's hateful language of you can't give them a choice. In the United States of America, you can't give them a choice because, the anti-choice party likes to talk about how all the people that they hate are limiting your rights and are taking your rights away, won't let you live in freedom, but you can't give them a choice, which of course leads to Brian Kilmeade talking about involuntary lethal injection for the homeless population. It's almost like they've been talking about this for a very long time. So now Brian Kilmeade goes ahead and finishes the full thought, goes full on Nazi. And if you don't believe me, I'm gonna get to that in a second. But right after that, a couple of people were outraged. So he offered this up.
In the morning, we were discussing the murder of Irina Zaruska in Charlotte, North Carolina, and how to stop these kinds of attacks by homeless, mentally ill assailants, including institutionalizing or jailing such people so they cannot attack again. Now, during that discussion, I wrongly said they should get lethal injections. I apologize for that extremely callous remark. I'm obviously aware that not all mentally ill homeless people act as the perpetrator did in North Carolina, and that so many homeless people deserve our empathy and compassion. Lawrence, back to you.
Did that statement sound like an apology to you? Did that statement sound like he understood anything that he was doing? Did that statement, not apology, sound like anything like he understood the gravity of what it is he's talking about and how he became radicalized to these Nazi beliefs? How when they get so upset that people call them Nazis because they keep doing Nazi shit, that maybe they should stop doing the Nazi shit and they'll stop being called Nazis. It's weird how even though people called out this Nazi regime and the Nazi and fascists they were pursuing and blowing up in our country, how it now has gotten to Brian Kilmeade's brain, and then he goes and broadcasts how we should start euthanizing the homeless. Well, now that we've gotten to this fever pitch, what they're telling you is the kind of homeland that they're looking to protect does not involve the kinds of folks that they don't like, the kinds of folks that this president of the United States has always said are less redeemable, don't have the same type of mental acuity, have the wrong color skin, come from the wrong countries, their families don't have the right cultures. Isn't that weird how if you keep saying and pushing Nazi becomes the norm? It doesn't take very much of a research to really see this stuff. So I want to read these couple excerpts from Wolfgang Ayas's historical study on the Nazis. This particular aspect of it, this study was called Vagrants and Beggars in Hitler's Reich. And I want you guys to keep in mind what Brian Kilmeade just said and how offended he'd be if you called him a Nazi. When they seized power, a massive round of homeless people was one of their first actions. In July 1933, they began a propaganda campaign against the nuisance of begging. The week of September 18th through 25th, 1933 was termed Beggars Week. During this week, large amounts of beggars and vagrants were taken into what was termed protective custody and were sometimes removed from shelters that they were residing in. However, Beggars Week was deemed a failure, as the Nazis at the time did not have the infrastructure to deal with the mass amounts of people that they were detaining. Some were forced into workhouses, but they rapidly reached overcrowded status and could take no more homeless people. Because the majority of unhoused people were still right back where they started, cities began to work on expelling their homeless people, along with other groups of undesirables. Some were moved to other cities to be put to work. Others fell under the control of the homeless and vagrancy departments of cities or regions. They were registered and monitored throughout the Nazi regime, and they were divided into multiple subgroups of homeless people, depending on their perceived use. So as they made, being homeless a criminal act, which is exactly what this administration is doing. Look what they did in Washington, D.C. What was the first thing he pushed towards? We got to get these homeless people off the streets because it's making us look disgusting and filthy, and the rest of the world doesn't understand how great and glorious we are. Pause for a second. Brian Kilmeade's colleague over at Fox News, Jesse Waters, the evening of that guy being shot, decided to say that Matthew Dowd over at MSNBC should be fired for saying that that guy said some horrible things and he brought this atmosphere in our society.
Well, Dowd should be fired immediately. I expect him to be terminated within 24 hours. You can't say Charlie deserved to die. Just can't say that. And I hope he loses his job.
Jesse Waters demanded that that man be fired. I think before the day was over, he was fired from MSNBC. I'm trying to figure out when this campaign for Brian Kilmeade, who pushed for the mass murder of anyone that's homeless, to be broadcast on Fox News's airwaves, at what point is his firing going to happen? Matter of fact, here's another content creator. She describes herself as a mis and disinformation researcher. Abby Richards, she broke down even further this connection between their Nazi thought process and their approach to homeless folks.
Trump is deploying the National Guard to D.C., and he's doing it by using a classic fascist talking point.
We're going to be removing homeless encampments from all over our parks. They're very dirty.
Welcome back to Fascist Propaganda 101. Today we're talking about how fascists weaponize homelessness. If you hate yourself enough to watch Fox News, you would know that they hate homeless people over there. They say homeless people choose to be homeless.
The people who are homeless prefer to stay homeless.
That's right.
No matter how you help them.
They're reckless.
There's a good chance the homeless started this fire.
They're filthy.
This is an ungoverned, filthy, and violent underworld.
They're hopeless.
These are people that have failed in life and they're on their deathbed.
Demonizing homeless people is essentially part of the fascist propaganda playbook. When the Nazis came to power in 1933, the Ministry of Propaganda began pushing for a nationwide swoop on beggars, and they issued these guidelines for the press. Beggars often forced their poverty upon people in the most repulsive way for their own selfish purposes. If this sight disappears, the result will be a definite feeling of relief and liberation. People will feel that things are becoming more stable again and that the economy is improving once more. Nazis would go on to classify beggars, drug addicts, alcoholics, and disabled people as asocials or work shy, basically anyone who didn't conform to their social norms. Homelessness is an ever-present sign of the failures of our economic system. It's a reminder that you can't punish people out of poverty and that we're all just a few strokes of bad luck away from losing everything that we have. But fascists know that homelessness makes us uncomfortable, so they capitalize on that discomfort by promising to get rid of it.
We also want to make DC safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals in homeless encampments as well.
But you can't brute force your way out of homelessness. Sending the National Guard to DC isn't about fixing homelessness. It's about making it look like they fixed homelessness. And it's one of the oldest tricks in the fascist playbook. As the Nazis literally wrote, a successful action against the nuisance of begging can have important propaganda benefits.
How about this direct connection? Somebody tell me how literally carrying out Nazi propaganda and Nazi agendas towards homeless people, to mental health folks that are suffering from mental health crises, to folks with autism, how that doesn't connect directly to what it is that these guys are doing. They just move on and say, how dare you challenge me on that? Because they feel like there's this superiority that they've got over our reality. And once you corner them on their hypocrisy, it turns into violence.